Hello and welcome to an Arsenal Fan TV podcast. It's your World Cup Weekly. I'm your host Giles, and tonight, or should I say good morning, we have a truly international feel with three special guests joining me. We've got Ava, who's just this moment come back from the Maracana. Good evening, Ava. How are you?
Yeah, I'm alright. How are you?
Too bad, not too bad. Did you enjoy yourself over there?
No.
All right. Well, it's quite short and curt. All right, we'll get to that in a minute. We've got Matt from Gunners Down Under. How are you, Matt?
Not too bad, mate. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. Thanks for waking up, taking the time to wake up early and join us.
No worries.
Where are you? Where are you residing exactly in Australia?
I'm in Melbourne.
Melbourne. And what time is it there now?
It's 7:30 in the morning now.
Wow. Did you manage to make Did you make the Australia Netherlands game or?
I did, yes. Yes, I did.
Wow.
That was difficult.
Good performance, though, I'd have thought.
Yeah, no, pretty happy with that. I mean, obviously going into it at the start, we probably feared the worst a little bit, but we, gave a good account of ourselves. So, yeah, pretty happy.
Good stuff. And finally, we've got Sam Kelly from the HandOfPod podcast and ESPN and Metro. How are you, Sam?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
Not too bad. Thanks for coming on. What did you make of Argentina's opening game the other day?
Game of two halves, wasn't it? As the cliche goes. Very poor in the second half. I was surprised. First half, sorry. I was surprised because I've seen mentioned in a few places that it's an unfamiliar system and whatnot, which wasn't really true. They've trained it before and they've played it in a few games. But the change after half time, I think, is back to how they're going to be. I apologise, I've got something in my throat. It's closer to how they're going to be playing their first choice system, let's say, and I think Sabella's going to have a rethink for future matches. But you don't lose the World Cup in the first match. You can lose it in the second match, as we've just seen.
Yeah, indeed.
Win or lose it in the first match.
What's the feeling over there in Buenos Aires? What's the mood amongst the Argentine fans over there?
Oh, the Argentine fans are gloomy, I think, after the first game as much as anything. It wasn't an overwhelmingly good performance, and there's perhaps a bit of pessimism starting to take root because people know that if Argentina go for it, then they can go toe to toe with anybody, and they can score one more than the opposition. Basically, they've done it against all of the top European sides in friendlies. They've done it against Brazil in friendlies in the last couple of years. And I think perhaps the main fear now is starting to be: is Alejandro Sabella going to have the balls to do that? I mean, he's going to go 4-3-3 in the next match against Iran. He's probably going to do the same against Nigeria. And Argentina's route through the knockout stages, assuming the other groups go the way that we're expecting them to go, isn't too taxing on them. But once they hit the semis, then it's going to become, I think, more of a case of, do we go back to 3-5-2? Do we try something else to reinforce the defence? Or do we stick at it and just keep going for teams, depending on how well it goes, and obviously depending on whether they get that far as well.
Okay, coolio. All right. Let's start with you, Ava. You were at the game. Give us your thoughts. How was it? What was the experience like over there?
The experience in Brazil is absolutely amazing. For a Spain fan, not that good at the moment. The stadium itself is breathtaking. I've been to 2 games in Salvador, and this was my first game at Rio. So to enter the stadium was just absolutely overwhelming. It's such a gorgeous stadium. As for the game, I still don't know what to say about it. I'm absolutely gutted. I'm devastated. Disappointed. I'm pissed off. I'm feeling a lot of emotions right now.
I mean, going into the game, did you think that Spain would come out with at least a draw, if not a win?
Yes, absolutely. And I think I put it on Twitter too. I'm usually one of those kind of fans who's positive right until the end. Like, even if my team is 5-0 down, I don't give up until the last 5 minutes. And the second Chile scored, I started crying. And after the second goal, I I started crying again, and I just gave up. I was hoping for a better half, but after I saw them coming up on the pitch to start the second half, I just knew that it wasn't going to happen.
Do you think it's a knock-on effect from the 5-1 defeat against Holland? I'm sorry, not Holland, Netherlands. I say. I know you schooled me this morning about that stuff.
Yes, I did. I don't know. To be honest, I didn't expect a defeat against the Netherlands at all. So I don't know what went wrong in the preparations to this World Cup. Maybe it's just the aging of the team or the difference in tactics with Costa up front. I don't know what's going on, but it's yeah.
It's interesting you say Costa, because everyone, thought that his conclusion sort of reinforced or made them even would have made them look even stronger in this tournament, and giving them the ability to sort of go further, But it wasn't the case. I mean, I heard a stat just after the game that he had something like 21 touches, 5 shots, and not one of them were on target. Do you think there wasn't enough time given? I mean, I know he had the injury, he came into the squad late. Do you think they just didn't have enough time to sort of include him, get him up to speed in sort of the tactics and how the team plays? Or do you think it's more sort of deeper line than that?
I don't know. I think with Costa there's 2 issues. First of all, I know he's a player who looks like he doesn't really care about what other people think about him, but when you play 2 games in a stadium full of people whistling and booing you, that's not going to do your game much good. And looking at the Spanish team, they weren't playing for Costa. They were still trying to play their old way, and that didn't really include Costa. And the few opportunities that he did get from his teammates, he missed them. His touches were, basically awful. I got to the point where I wanted to run down the pitch and slap him in the face just to wake him up, because he didn't look fit. He absolutely didn't look match fit. He wasn't paying, he was paying attention, but he wasn't paying much attention to what his teammates were doing. And yeah, I was so frustrated with him. But it's also something to do with tactics of the Spanish national team. I mean, they usually play for each other. They know exactly what everyone is, and with Costa, as you say, he didn't have a lot of time to get used to this team, and I think that's got something to do with it too.
Matt, would you agree with that assessment? I mean, you watched the game as well. What did you make of the game, and how Spain performed?
Sorry, mate, this computer autoplay. Yeah, look, I'll probably be somewhere on the same page, to be honest. I mean, with Costa as well, for me, maybe I'm slightly harsh on the guy, but I'm still not completely sold on just where he's at against that level of opposition on the international stage. I mean, I know he's obviously had a fantastic season in Spain, and he's performed in the Champions League and been part of a side that made the finals there and won their league, clearly. But I don't know. I'm just not 100% on him on the international stage yet, and I think he's struggled a little bit so far in that game. In terms of the Spanish performance overall, I think the opening game against the Dutch probably had a pretty big impact. I mean, the confidence, you can never undersell confidence in sport for mine, and to get smashed like they did in that game, although there were obviously extenuating circumstances. I mean, it could have gone completely different if a couple of instances in the first half had have been taken. But yeah, I think that really set them back a little bit, and Chile just came out and took advantage.
Yeah, indeed. Sam, the colonial masters were vanquished from the tournament by their former subjects in Chile. What did you make? I mean, you're there in South America. Chile, what do Argentines and the rest of the South Americans make of this Chile squad? I mean, they're quite talented, aren't they?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, nobody who saw them against any of the sides in World Cup qualifying could have been too surprised by the performances they put in. I apologise if you can hear the dog, by the way, that's my neighbour. They got absolutely tonked very early on in qualifying. I was at the match here in Buenos Aires, 4-1 by Argentina. But after that, they regrouped. Jorge Sampaoli came in, and he's reshaped them along the lines that have become traditional in Chilean football in the last few years, which are very Bielsista. Obviously, Bielsa was Chile manager a few years ago, and they very much kept things in that image. And I mean, you can see it paying off. When the draw was made in December, everybody was saying, "Oh, it's a horrible draw. What a shame for Chile. They've done so well to qualify. Now they've got this awful group." And I thought, and I'm surprised that they qualified this early and this easily, but it doesn't surprise me that they've managed to get a win against one of the two teams that people thought that they were going to struggle against. I thought they could definitely beat one of the Netherlands or Spain. Who knows, they could do both. I fear for them slightly if they face Brazil, because almost regardless of form or anything else, when Chile play Brazil, it always ends up 3-0 to Brazil. But they're magnificent to watch. They're fantastic. And an interesting mix of styles in the group as well, obviously, with the Netherlands and Spain. All three of those sides try to attack, but they all do it in very different ways, which I think it's been fun to watch so far. I'm looking forward to Chile Netherlands in the last week.
Ava, can I bring it back to you? Iker Casillas, he was at fault for a couple of goals, or at least one goal against the Netherlands. He didn't cover himself in glory for the goal that I think the second Chilean goal. Would you have started him? I mean, he's hardly played any football for Real Madrid this season or last season. Hindsight's a perfect science, but I mean, would you have played maybe De Gea or Pepe Reina? Or would you even have taken Casillas?
Yes, I would have taken him, definitely. And I think what Spain's done by, showing Casillas that they still trust him and that, to try and get his confidence back, because that must have been a hard blow for him to have just been knocked aside by Real Madrid. I think that's magnificent, but I wouldn't have, in hindsight, I wouldn't have started him for the Chile game. However, he's had, it's not just all on him. I mean, the defense has been, well, not very good, to say the least. And there were gaps there that even Casillas couldn't, fill. And he made some mistakes, yeah, sure, but I think it's very harsh on him as a goalkeeper with, that defense in front of him, especially seeing what they've done, to put it on him alone. Exactly.
Indeed. Matt, do you think that, I don't know, it's very hard to sort of try and get a handle on what exactly went wrong with Spain, isn't it? I mean, would you have dropped him for the second game and played maybe De Gea or Reina instead?
Look, I guess it's always hard to tell from the outside looking in. I mean, it is true, obviously, that he struggled, Casillas, to get games with Real Madrid in recent times, and obviously, you're looking at two other keepers who have been playing more regular football with their side in De Gea and Reina, but I honestly don't know is the answer. I mean, he struggled a little bit in the first game. Whether or not it's the correct decision to then go and make the change, perhaps, but I'm really not 100% sure, to be honest. But I think there is merit to what Ava says in regards to the team putting trust in him, and maybe they hoped that with that additional confidence that he'd be able to go out there and maybe play himself into some form, but it seems that it wasn't to be.
Okay. Sam, you just mentioned to me now that De Gea was injured, so that would have left Pepe Reina. And I mean, he's been a long-term understudy to Iker Casillas. He's been waiting patiently. Do you agree with Ava and Matt, or do you have a different sort of take on the goalkeeper situation?
Well, in terms of the Casillas situation, I think it's a shame De Gea was injured, because I'm going to make myself very popular now. I'm one of the enemy. I'm a Man United fan. And I tweeted after the 5-1 against the Netherlands that it could well be the beginning of De Gea's international career. Because, of course, I mean, it's not the first time that Casillas has conceded a load, but it's tended to happen against Barcelona, which is a little more understandable, let's say, when they were in their pomp. And he's been clearly out of practice. He's, as you mentioned, flapped at the second Chilean goal today, something rotten. Having said that, Argentina aren't in any position to talk themselves because Sergio Romero has barely played for Monaco this season. I think he's got 3 league appearances and 6 in the French Cup. And Alejandro Sabella's stuck with him. So sometimes, and that's a decision that I've defended myself, so sometimes the manager has to take a decision about who is his first choice goalkeeper, to base the defence around that, and then to say that he's sticking with him because he feels he's the best goalkeeper for that team, for that group. And it has to be said that Casillas, whilst he's looked unimpressive in these 2 matches, has also at times not been helped out by his defence.
Indeed. No, that's very true. Javi Martinez being brought in at centre half in place of Gerard Piqué, it didn't seem to work very well, did it? The partnership with Sergio Ramos. Ramos kind of, I don't know about Ramos. He seems to have lapses in concentration, whether it's for the national team or for Real Madrid, and they seem to struggle without, in this post Carlos Puyol era. What kind of team do you think they'll put out in the final game against Australia now, Sam?
It's a good question. I think that if I was Vicente Del Bosque, I'd go with a younger side, or as young a side as you can put together with their squad, because clearly everything hasn't worked out, and you need to, whether you're going to need to start looking at why that is and starting to put together, bringing through some of the younger players. I mean, how much you actually get from doing that for one game at the World Cup when they've already been eliminated is another question, of course. But I'd certainly, if De Gea's injury turns out to allow him to play the last match, I'd give him a run out. And yeah, just vary things up a bit. Some of the starters who maybe haven't embarrassed themselves quite as much, if there are any, with some of the younger guys. I'm very disappointed, by the way, that Sergio Ramos has gone out the tournament, because I had him in my twatball team. I thought he was going to provide a steady stream of stupidity and yellow cards all the way to the final. Give me plenty of points, but he's out, obviously.
Indeed. Ava, looking at the stadium, it seemed to be a sea of red. I mean, red Chileans. Was there a lot of Spanish support in the stadium today?
Actually, there was. I was surprised by how many Spanish people there were, but I have to say that I was surrounded by Chile fans, so I think most of us were. But the Spanish fans were not very loud at all. I think we all shouted 2 or 3 times, and that's about it. So, we weren't much used.
Sounds like Arsenal at home at certain points. It must have. I mean, what the feeling coming out of the stadium? It must have been. What did you talk to any Spanish fans? What were their feelings? Coming out of the stadium.
Basically the same as mine. They were gutted, disappointed. Some were very angry. I think most of us were very confused because we expected some sort of result, at least a point, and to be going home already is just, it's unbelievable. And I still don't believe it. I still feel like I'm stuck in a nightmare. Well, nightmare, I mean, it's not Arsenal, but a very bad dream. So, yeah, I've seen people crying. I've comforted some lady that I've never met before. Her son was very upset. It's a shock from winning Euro 2008, Euro 2012 and World Cup 2010 and now going out in the group stages with still a game to go. It's unbelievable.
I've been seeing some of the headlines already and whatnot. They're saying tiki-tacoed, tiki-tara, as Gary Lineker said on BBC this evening, end of an era. Do you feel it is an end of an era, or do you think that you know, as Xavi said, you know, the Spanish will live and die by tiki-taka.
I wouldn't say it's the end of an era. I think it needs upgrading, if that makes sense. You know, Spain still's got a lot of youngsters, 20, 25-year-olds in that team right now, and a very talented young team too. So I think Spain is definitely coming back strong. But they might need a few years to recover from this.
Mm-hmm. Were you surprised that Santi Cazorla didn't really get much game time in this tournament so far?
Yes, I was. I from about the 30th minute, I said we need Sesky and we need Santi on this pitch just to make a difference, because they can. They are two players that, especially in that game with such a strong Chile squad, and kudos to them. They did extremely well today. This team was crying out for Cesc, as much as I hate to say it right now, and for Santi. And, you know, when Santi came on, the game changed. He had a chance or two, I think, and he was running up and down, some new energy there. It was brilliant to watch him.
Matt, would you agree with Ava's points about the Cesc and Santi?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think Santi did look, you know, the game changer when he came on, and considering, you know, the seasons he's had really a good. This season he struggled a little bit, but he's really been quite a key player for us since he arrived, and I thought he'd probably get a little bit more action at the World Cup, considering his ability, but obviously I was disappointed to see that as well. But I do think they were crying out for his inclusion and Cesc today, and I would agree, yes, entirely.
I wonder if that's a sort of point of remark at Del Bosque, that he's sort of stuck by his tried and tested generals, and is sort of, you know, is quite reluctant to you know, make changes. I mean, people thought that before the game he'd make a number of changes. I think he only made, was it 2 or 3 changes? Is that right, Ava? 2 changes. I suppose you don't really want to disrupt a team too much, but you know, in-game tactics seem to be sort of reactive, didn't they, and not very. I don't know.
They've won 2 international tournaments, I guess, in recent times, so he probably has a lot of faith in the players that have gotten him to that point. So I guess it's understandable to an extent.
If I can just butt in as well, I've just seen Miguel Delaney, as mentioned on Twitter. He's at the press conference at the moment. And he says that Xavi Alonso has just been talking about how, after winning three titles in a row and all the rest of it, obviously not counting the Confederations Cup, that they couldn't keep the hunger up as well. And I think that's a major thing, especially when for so much of the early period of that success they were pressing very high up the pitch. It's a very energy intensive way of playing. So I think if you have that, and you have a generation who've won everything, and you don't mix it up enough, you don't have enough hungry players who've come from outside the team, they've stagnated as well, clearly.
That's a good point.
Indeed, very good point. Okay, all right. So that's Spain and Chile. Let's move on to the earlier game. Your boys, Matt, put in a very impressive performance against the Dutch. Would you feel as you were unlucky to lose the game?
I think so. I mean, I thought we pushed them very hard and were very competitive for most of the game. And obviously, the final goal was a real painful way to go down to 3-2 and obviously eventually lose the game, because I thought it was, you know, easily preventable, clearly. So when you get so close and lose to that sort of finish, I think you're always going to feel like you could have gone a little further.
Am I right in saying, I heard this stat when I was watching the game, and they said something about the Dutch hadn't beaten Australia, or they struggled to beat Australia in games. Is that right? Did you have a pretty decent record against the Dutch?
Yeah, they haven't. Until today, they hadn't actually beaten us in any international games. That's like mostly friendlies, obviously, and such. But yeah, they hadn't actually beaten us till this morning.
And just going into the tournament, I mean, a lot of people had written you off, and you know, the first game you were, were unfortunate to not get anything from the Chile game, although they were very good as well. In this game again, just come up short. I thought when I saw the first game, I saw Tim Cahill as a false nine. I thought, it's 34. Is it going to work? But to their credit, they play a very good system, don't they? It's quite high tempo. They're very sort of seem to stick to the letter of the law in terms of what the manager wants from them. Did you feel that there was more, that Australia had more to give than what basically the rest of the world had made of them?
I think so. I mean, I was very sceptical as well coming into the tournament. I mean, we've been through a bit of a transitional period, I guess, in the last few years. We had our golden generation, or so we call it, through 2006 and maybe towards 2010, but a lot of them were gone by that point. And I think it was probably easy for people to look at this current side and look at the youth and the fact that quite a few of our players are playing at home rather than abroad and write us off. But I think they gave a good account of themselves here, but we did prove that, I believe that, we did have more in the locker than people have given us credit for, and it gives hope for the future, I guess. There were quite a few young players that stood out. And, after feeling very pessimistic before the tournament, I do feel a lot better about our long-term future on the international stage.
Now, there's many players there that I had never heard of before. Lecky and Orr. I think Orr plays in Europe, doesn't he? Is that right?
I think he plays in Holland, Tommy Orr.
Right. And the Netherlands, right. Yeah, she'll pull you up on that, trust me. And Matt, is it Matt Ryan, the young goalkeeper? He looked pretty decent. I mean, what is the A-League? It is the A-League. What is the A-League like? I mean, it's much maligned as far as I can see, but I mean, a lot of your squad have come from, were picked from the A-League, weren't they? Or several of your players were picked from the A-League. Do you think, again, it's another case of the sort of the ignorance of the rest of the world not really giving Australia the kind of credit it deserves, And do you think that on the back of their performances, we'll see a lot more of these players become household names around Europe?
Yeah, look, I think it's a mixture. I mean, it wasn't just abroad that weren't giving us much credit. I mean, at home, a lot of the Australians were very pessimistic. We weren't giving ourselves much credit, I think. So it's not just the ignorance from people who are unfamiliar with the players, but obviously the league, it is much maligned, once again, even back home, but it is improving. And I think that's reflected in what we've seen this tournament, in that some players that have played in the league have managed to make that step, and in some cases look, very convincing. And you've also got Mile Jedinak, who now, captains a Premier League football club in Crystal Palace, who only, I think maybe 3 seasons ago was actually playing in the A-League. So it's improving, as is the quality of, the talent overall, I think.
Ava, sorry, there's been a heavy Dutch influence in Australian football from the Good Hiddink revolution, and apparently there's a lot of Dutch coaches that are actually employed over in Australia.
Don Van Schip is a head coach down here.
Indeed. Ava, do you know much about the Dutch over there in Australia? Have you sort of been keeping abreast of what they're developing over there?
Actually, I read up on it before the game earlier today, but it's very strange because apparently they're doing rather well, but the Dutch media hardly ever mentions them. So up until a few hours ago, I had no idea there were that many Dutch people in Australia for football. So no, I can't really tell you much about it.
But I mean, people, I don't know what people made of Hiddink's appointment as Australian coach in 2006. Maybe they thought he went for the money, but obviously he put things in place there, didn't he, Matt?
Yeah, he did. I think he put in place a good structure and something for the next managers to build on. Unfortunately, I think the next two managerial choices we made might have set us back a tiny bit, and I think we may be headed in the right direction now. But a lot of the credit does go to Hiddink for what he created, and that he managed to get us to the World Cup for the first time in quite some time. And as a result, I think there has been a conscious effort in the country to source from Dutch football, Dutch knowledge, and to learn from that and to bring coaches that can maybe impart some of that structure and wisdom to our younger talent. And I think it's a good strategy.
Indeed. Sam, let me bring you in. Did you see the Netherlands and Australia game?
I did. I managed to miss the match and turn it on about 30 seconds after Tim Cahill's volley. So spectacular timing. But I did, obviously I saw the replay afterwards and then wished that I'd been watching all along. But yeah, really entertaining from that point onwards.
And are they talked about much? Are the smaller nations talked about much in Argentina?
No, they're patronised more than anything. Particularly the ones who... The Netherlands maybe less, obviously, demographically, the Netherlands is a relatively small nation, but with a much bigger footballing
history.
I hope I'm not being insulting to Matt in saying...
That's all right.
So from that point of view, no, and obviously as well, the Netherlands were the country that Argentina won their first World Cup final against. And the rest of it, so there's a bit of shared history there. But by and large, there's not very much sort of knowledge within Argentina of football outside Argentina. Argentines tend to watch the local league. That's it. They often won't even see a lot of the guys playing for the national team in Europe for their clubs. And so there's a lot of bad commentary and bad punditry and stuff, the same kind of stuff that you get on the BBC and ITV over there. The two countries, the UK and Argentina are two countries that are far more similar to one another than they probably like to admit, to be honest.
Really? Okay. So what do you make of the Netherlands then, Sam? Do you think they're serious challengers?
Yes, I didn't have them down as serious challenges. I thought it was going to be Chile and Spain who would get out of the group. But having seen them, particularly against Spain in the first match, okay, Spain played very poorly, but you've also got the enormous amount of pressure on everybody for their first match, and they didn't show at all. And I think they can go a long way in the tournament. Of course, a lot depends now on the final group match and who ends up with Brazil in the second round, or the alternative, I think, to assuming Brazil win their group, you've got either you're playing Brazil or you're playing at 1 p.m. in Fortaleza in the second round, which from what one of my mates, Ed Mallion, was saying on Twitter is incredibly humid, even for the 4 p.m. kickoff there that he's already been to. So at 1 p.m. it could be interesting. But of course that's going to be the same for the other team as well. So.
Indeed. Ava, what did you make of the Dutch Australia game?
A very interesting game. It was a game that I enjoyed watching. Unfortunately, next time I can't scream out my nickname for Robin van Persie when he's playing against Chile, which is such a shame. But no, I thought Australia was doing really, really well. I honestly didn't expect them to be that good. I kept staring at Lecky for several reasons, one of them being that he's actually a really decent footballer, and I enjoyed watching him play football.
And what was the other reasons?
Oh, he's very good looking. And by the way, it was really unfair because I know my baby sister was there watching the Dutch win. But every single Australian guy they put on the screen was rather good looking. So I've basically decided if I'm ever going to leave Europe, I'm going to Australia. But apart from that, no, the game was very, very enjoyable. Australia did really, really well. Cahill's volley was just unbelievable.
It was a worldie, wasn't it?
I screamed. I didn't even know I was supporting Australia for this game, but I screamed so loudly, and right there and then I knew that I was supporting Australia for that game. It was absolutely brilliant. Well done to the Aussie.
Do you think, Matt, that there was a chance that Netherlands didn't take them as seriously as they should have, or do you think it really was down to the Australian performance? They raised their game rather than the Dutch sort of lowered their level of performance?
I'd like to think we raised our game. I mean, it's hard to tell from the outside looking in, I guess, but I think we have a history with our football team of, when our backs are against the wall, we can put in fairly decent performances. There's nothing that bands us together better than everyone else getting on our backs. And I think that we upped our level of performance and we went there, trying to prove a point. And, maybe the Dutch clearly weren't as good as they were on the day that they beat Spain, but, maybe we just played better than Spain did. That's what I'm telling myself anyway. That's what I'm going to run with.
And going into the Spain game, do you think now that you can make it, you could, give them the death knell and make it 3 defeats for them in a row?
It'll be interesting. I mean, first of all, it probably depends on what sort of side Del Bosque decides to put out. I mean, there was a brief discussion on that a couple of minutes ago, whether he goes with youth or whatever else. But for me, he might decide that he doesn't want to go out with 3 games and no results. So he might actually put out his strongest team and give it a real go. And if that's the case, Spain might come out breathing fire a little bit, not wanting to leave with 0 points or 1 point even.
I mean, is there a chance that they could do a France and lose all 3 games like they did in 2002? France went out as World Cup champions, having lost all 3 games in Japan and Korea. I mean, do you think that the players could just, the events of this World Cup would have transpired to make them sort of look, a shell of themselves and Australia pick up their game again and get a memorable victory? Do you think there's a chance that could happen?
Well, I think there's always a chance. I mean, especially after Xabi Alonso's comments, which are probably quite damning from a Spanish perspective. I think, if their mindsets aren't right, which it doesn't seem that they are, I think there's always a chance we could knock them off. To be honest, I'd be wrapped with a draw, regardless of the troubles they've been through this tournament. So we'll have to wait and see. But anything's possible, mate. Like I said, they don't seem to be all right at the moment, and that always leaves open the possibility.
Sam, you made the comment earlier, and Matt just brought it up again about Xabi Alonso in the press conference. Do you think there'll be a lot of pointing of fingers in the Spanish camp now, and how do you think they'll be able to put it to bed or put it aside for one more game before they exit the competition?
I may be based in Argentina, but I've got 2 cousins who are half Catalan and half English, and who've grown up outside Barcelona, so I know something about the Spanish press, and I would have thought that the media are going to be far worse for that than the team themselves. For all of the Barcelona against Real Madrid and stuff, and all the talk of division in the squad, they've seemed very unified over the last 6 years, and they wouldn't have achieved what they've achieved if they weren't. So I think that they'll be okay to try and rescue some dignity against Australia. Obviously, what Marca and AS and Sport and all the rest of them are saying back home is another matter entirely, but I think that I doubt there'll be too many problems within the squad themselves.
Okay, cool. All right. Let's move on to Argentina. Argentina are playing on Saturday against Iran. First game against, who was it?
Bosnia-Herzegovina.
Bosnia-Herzegovina, of course. Who else could it be? What did you make of the performance? Were you worried or concerned, or was the Argentine public worried or concerned by the performance on the first game?
At half-time, definitely. Nice early goal from an own goal, obviously. And then after that, not very much. Couple of flashes, and the best really that Argentina showed was, about 30 seconds or something before the half-time break, when Angel Di Maria burst through midfield and fed Lionel Messi, who jinked around a bit, and then the half-time whistle went just after he lost the ball. There really wasn't very much to be optimistic about in the first half at all. Alejandro Sabella acknowledged afterwards that he'd not made the best decision pre-match in terms of the tactics. I think Argentina were expecting the Bosnians to line up with 2 up front, which is what they did last November when those sides met in St. Louis in the US for a friendly. And I think that's why he went with 3 at the back. But aside from the tactics, there was no sort of focus from many of the players. Messi obviously is the one that everyone's always going to focus on and say, oh, he wasn't pulling his weight and whatever when they don't do well. But across the midfield, it wasn't set up well, but there was no need to get your foot on the ball and try and do something. When playing it out of the defence, there were lots of just quick vertical passes up, which ended up giving the ball away and allowing Bosnia-Herzegovina to overrun the midfield. So it's partly, as Sabella admitted, partly the manager's fault, but also the players have got to improve the game as well. In the second half, obviously that changed. And as I say, I think that certainly in the last two group games, you can expect to see Argentina starting with the system that they started the second half with against Bosnia, which is the one that was very much the first choice throughout the qualifiers. So they're going to improve. They're going to improve. But certainly at the moment, the expectations have been lowered, let's say, considerably, which could turn out to be a good thing for the national side if they felt some of that pressure, if they can feel it lifting now they're in Belo Horizonte. We shall see.
Going into the tournament, what were the press, what did the media make of this team? I mean, over here there was a lot of talk of, fantastic going forward, but defence shaking. As you said, Sergio Romero was a suspect goalkeeper. And for me, I'd said, I've been spoken to a couple of Brazilian guys a few weeks ago, and I suggested that, Argentina couldn't win it, and they said they hope not, but that they bloody well could win it. I suppose there are a lot of people's choices as probable winners. What do the national papers make of their chances?
Well, before the tournament, first of all, when the draw was made, there's basically one sports daily in Argentina. It's called Ole, and their front page headline the day after the draw was made was "We start in the semi-final." So that should give you some idea into the modesty that your typical Argentine has, and also to how confident they were with the draw. And I think, to an extent it's justifiable. Argentina have got a group that they ought to win, and then they have got, assuming the other groups go the way that they're expected to go, that they have a path to the semi-final, which consists of playing sides that you would expect them to beat. Not bad sides, but sides that Argentina have shown themselves, by and large, in the last few years to be better than. So there's some justification for that. The squad has calmed things down a little bit. Obviously, don't need to tell anybody in Europe that there were lots of calls in Argentina for Carlos Tevez to be included, and for possibly more legitimately for Wilfredo Caballero of Malaga to be included in goal. But Sabella's stuck with the players that he's been faithful to up to this point and that have given him the results. And it's all really about making sure that the defence continues to improve through the tournament. The defence the whole of the defence isn't so much of a problem. Romero, as I mentioned earlier, could have done with a lot more playing time at club level in the last season, but he's very rarely let Argentina down. Obviously the goal on Sunday went through his legs, but I don't think there was an awful lot he could have done about that, in fairness. He's rarely let Argentina down. Pablo Zabaleta on the right and Ezequiel Garay at right centre-back are both superb players. The problem is more than anything Marcos Rojo at left-back, the guy who tried the Rabona in his own penalty area on Sunday and got widely praised for it, but then you think, well, if that hadn't come off, he's extremely stupid. So he's the weak point, and a lot of Argentina's defensive play is going to be focused around how to take as much of the pressure off him as possible. But if they can get that right, and I think that there are not going to be many managers better than Sabella at working out how to do that, then there's no reason that they can't go a very long way into the tournament. Yeah, especially obviously they're going to improve on that first showing, as I say.
And Messi, I mean, there was a lot of talk about Messi not having performed the way he does for Barcelona, for the national team. That goal that won the game certainly seemed to show that he's ready to take up that mantle. I mean, it's good that I suppose there's more. He's got a better supporting cast, I suppose, than Neymar has with Brazil. That's how I view it from afar. I don't know if you agree with that, Sam.
Yeah, and Argentina's attack has been consciously set up around him to try and mirror the period of the Barcelona attack when Messi was settling in and was first becoming a really brilliant player. You've got a forward who leads the line, who knows how to lay it off to Messi in the form of Gonzalo Higuain. You've got somebody across the pitch from him who, okay, is not as good as Messi, but who's definitely no slouch in Sergio Aguero, and a midfield runner with at least 3 lungs in Angel Di Maria. who absolutely busts a gut to get up from the midfield three when Argentina win the ball. They're set up around him, whereas for Neymar, it's not as much of a... He's not...
He's part of a system, isn't he?
Precisely, yeah. I mean, he's clearly saying that Neymar is not important to Brazil is ridiculous, but Brazil's system has not been set up around Neymar to the same extent that Argentina's has been set up around Messi. It's justifiable, obviously. If you've got the best player in the world, then not setting up the system to allow him to achieve his potential would be stupid. You'd be shooting yourself in the foot to do that. And he's been coming into it now. The last couple of years for Argentina, no questions really. Since Sabella took over, there have been no questions asked about him anymore. There's not been any more of this. He can't do it for Argentina the way he does it for Barcelona. None of that. So it's starting to pay off. And, even then, he's just had an allegedly poor season for Barcelona in which he scored, 41 goals and set up 20 or 25 or something in 46 matches. If that's a bad season, then I wouldn't mind having a bad season myself.
Indeed. Eva, did you manage, what do you make of the Argentina team? Do you think they could go all the way, or do you think they might come a cropper once they meet one of the big sides, if they meet one of the big sides on the way to the final?
I don't think they can go all the way. Sorry. But, I highly doubt it with Brazil still in it, and I'm just expecting Italy to go through, and the Netherlands still in there. I just don't think Argentina will go all the way. However, I do think they'll do fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And why do you think that then?
Well, maybe.
Which one they're lacking?
Maybe that has something to do with the fact that if I say anything positive about Brazil, my brother will quite possibly kill me about Argentina. Sorry. If I don't say anything positive about Brazil, my brother will kill me. No, it's. I think Argentina's got quite a good squad with Messi and Aguero both in there. But yeah, I honestly don't know. I'm not an expert on Argentina at all.
Matt, what do you reckon?
Yeah, look, when I've sort of structured my little, group predictions and everything, I've probably got Argentina to go down to Italy in a semi-final. I'm pretty keen on the Italians. I think they're going to have a good tournament. And although I do think Argentina are a very good team, I'm also of the opinion I just don't see them being quite good enough to go all the way. I said semi-finals is probably the maximum for me. I think they'll get done there.
Okay. Cool. All right. Let's move on to the officiating side of the World Cup. Just talk generally about the World Cup.
Yeah.
There's been some interesting decisions made by the officials during this World Cup, more than I can remember for 2010. But then again, I can't remember what happened last week. So 4 years ago is a stretch. There has been. I mean, in the games that have happened so far, there's been loads of incidents, whether it's soft decisions going Brazil's way, or the big team's way, or to the this travesty of the goal line technology. Sam, I'm going to start with you. First game, Brazil versus Croatia, was it? Yeah, it was Brazil versus Croatia. We had the penalty that really shouldn't have been a penalty. And it sort of like set the trend in terms of dodgy officiating. What do you make of it?
I thought you were going to ask me how the Argentine press reacted to that.
You could tell us that as well.
No, the penalty itself, the Argentine Twitter unfortunately exploded and started being rather unpleasant and making a lot of unpleasant jokes about the referee's eyes and whatnot being Japanese. But the penalty itself, clearly it wasn't a penalty. No one's going to suggest that it was, because we can see that it wasn't. But the referee, given where he was standing, given the view that he had and the amount of time that he had to make the decision, I can understand why it was given, if that makes sense. I think it was a bad decision, but I can understand it. Having said that, when I look at officiating now, I always end up referring back to an interview that I did just over a year ago with Horacio Elizondo, who's the Argentine referee who sent off Zinedine Zidane in the 2010 World Cup final. And he spent 10 or 20 minutes sort of explaining to me that he has a very good show here on Argentine television, which goes out every Monday lunchtime, and they look back over the weekend's Argentine First Division football, and they look at all of the refereeing decisions, right or wrong, the main talking points, and Elizondo takes them through and says, so this might not have been a penalty, for instance, but the reason that the ref has given it is, look where he's standing, look at his sight line, is there anybody in the way, and all of this other stuff. Has his linesman given him maybe an erroneous word in his ear, in the earpiece, all of this kind of stuff, which makes me think a lot more about it now. I'm really glad that he points it all out to me. So I can understand why Nishimura gave the penalty, even though it clearly wasn't a penalty.
Okay, all right, cool. Ava, what do you make of the refereeing decisions in this World Cup so far?
Some have been rather good, actually, some referees, that is. Others have been, well, Premier League level, kind of good, giving all the advantages to the big teams. Some have been absolutely shocking, but then again, it's the FIFA, so I'm not really that surprised anymore. The first game, Brazil-Croatia, I was absolutely shocked by the refereeing throughout the game, not just the penalty. I felt like Croatia didn't get any respect from that referee.
There was definitely a sense of him being a homer, wasn't there?
Well, I think, sorry to butt in, but I think the Neymar only getting a booking for that elbow to the back of, was it Modric's head in the first
Yeah.
half? That's a far worse decision. Obviously, it didn't cause the same amount of furore as the penalty, but it was a worse decision in and of itself than giving the penalty. It was far harder to comprehend. Yeah,
indeed. Would you agree with that? That's the point you were making, wasn't it, Ava?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. And it kind of, as I said, it sort of set a trend. I mean, there was another game, who was it now? There was another dodgy decision with a big team, wasn't there? It wasn't an Argies, was it? Was it an Argentine decision? No, I can't remember. There were some other dodgy refereeing decisions.
There were 2 goals wrongly disallowed for Mexico before they went 1-0 up against Cameroon in their first match.
Yes, right, yeah, indeed.
We had a penalty not given for someone almost pulling Cahill's shirt off too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, I mean, and then you got the goal line technology. Now, I don't know what pictures you're getting over there in Australia, Matt, or what pictures you're getting over there in Buenos Aires, Sam, but over here, they show, and apparently it's down to the actual match director what shots and pictures and footage they show us over here. But even when there's not a dubious decision, they show us, where the ball bounced on the line or whatever. And then they had the incident on Saturday or Sunday. Jonathan Pierce was commentating, and he made an absolute pig's ear.
I heard about it.
I'm sure it's made the rounds around the world. I mean, he made an absolute pig's ear of the decision, the call. What did you make of it, Sam?
Well, I mean, the call, obviously, there's nothing to make of it. It was perfectly clear. From what I heard about Jonathan Pierce's reaction, he's clearly an idiot. At the same time, they could have simplified it a bit by not flashing up the words "no goal" in the middle of the replay. Because when that happened, I was watching on with no commentary on. I just heard the sound noise, and you could hear the entire crowd in the stadium go, "Ooh!" And then afterwards, it caused a massive ruckus between the 2 managers. So, although it was pretty clear watching at home on the TV, having already seen a replay before they showed the goal decision, it was pretty clear what had happened. To anybody who was in the stadium at the time, there's that potential for confusion. I think they could have done it a little more clearly. Obviously, the reason was to clarify that it was an own goal from the goalkeeper rather than going in off the post from Benzema. But could have been better managed, I think.
Matt, how was it viewed over there in Australia? I mean, did you watch the game, and what did the commentators make of it? I mean, what was the reaction to that incident?
Yeah, look, I did watch the game. I don't remember exactly what the commentators said, to be perfectly honest. But in terms of the fan reaction, everyone's pretty much accepted accepted it pretty casually. I think, goal line technology, there you go, it was a goal. Is sort of the reaction down here, I guess. Better than the alternative when it's just sort of made on human judgment and it, might have been paid no goal. So, but, for me, it was pretty clear, it was a goal and on we go.
Indeed. Okay, cool. Do you think that these teething problems aside, we should see an improvement? I mean, the Japanese referee was sent home after that game, wasn't he? Do you think there's been a sort of a steady or gradual, a slight improvement in terms of officiating? I know you said that Tim Cahill was assaulted, today. But I mean, that aside, were you satisfied with the refereeing in today's game, Matt?
Yeah, the Cahill decision was a Chile game, but overall, I try not to be too critical because at the end of the day, you're going to get over 90 minutes. Both teams are going to get calls that go against them and go favourably towards them. So I think, look, the quality of the officiating overall hasn't been that bad. I think it was just a lot easier to focus on that first game, and seeing as it was the first game of the tournament and it was Brazil and, at their home tournament, I think the furor was probably as bad as some of the decisions were. I think the furor was compounded by the fact that everyone was like getting on, here we go, it's already started, home advantage, getting behind them. So I think it has improved since then, but I do think that the issues in that first game were magnified a little bit considering all the attention that was on it. So I've been impressed so far. It's all right.
Okay, cool. Sam, I just want to ask, Nishimura, I think that was Nishimura, I think that was the referee's name. After the game, there was a picture of him in a Brazil top that was trending on Twitter globally. And it just came to me now, could that have been the work of some mischievous, malicious Argentine, journalist or something like that? I mean, where did that picture come from? I don't know if you saw it.
I doubt journalists, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if it came from Argentina's Twitter. Argentines are very, very, very active on social media. Supposedly, per head of population, there are more Argentines connected to Facebook, for instance, than any other country in the world, or something stupid. And Argentine Twitter is very, although I mentioned the rather unfortunate xenophobia that went out to the fact that the referee was Japanese, they're by and large, they're very sort of, when they're not doing that, they're very creative and often humorous and funny. So it really wouldn't surprise me at all if it came from an Argentine Twitter account originally, although I don't know.
Great. All right, let's move on to the tournament in general. I want to ask you all what have been your best games. I'm going to start with you, Ava. What have been your best games of the tournament so far?
That's a hard one. I have to go with Germany-Portugal. It was...
That was another one which had a dubious refereeing decision, wasn't it? The incident between Pepe and...
Oh, come on. That was a clear headbutt.
Was it? I mean...
It was right.
It was.
Yeah, they've been giving red cards for that sort of behaviour for a while. I think you've got to expect it if you're going to do that.
It wasn't a butt as such, but it was definitely a butt.
It was a head in the face, but it wasn't... I mean, Roy Keane would have said that was never a butt in a million years.
It wasn't breaking habit.
Alan Pardew might have agreed with him.
Yeah. Go on over then. All right. So you think that the Germany-Portugal game was one of your favourite games so far?
Yes, it was, mainly because that was one of the three games I've attended so far, and Spain didn't lose, so it was quite a good game in general. Plus to see three gunners on the pitch was fantastic, and the Germans were having so much fun on that pitch. I'm going to get killed if my brother listens to this podcast, by the way. But they were having so much fun. The fans were absolutely outstanding. Cristiano Ronaldo running up to the referee, absolutely furious, and it was a game full of passion. It was a game where the Germans were just having a laugh, really, and it was a game full of frustrations, and Pepe pulled a Pepe. So, yes, it was a good game, and to be honest, I don't think the referee was bad at all at that game.
Okay, Sam, for you, best game performance so far?
I might get in trouble with my temporary employers at the Telegraph for saying this, because I'm supposed to be covering Uruguay for them, but it's difficult not to cheer a little bit with Uruguay Costa Rica. I like Uruguay. I love it as a country. I really like Montevideo. I like the sort of cartoonish level of violence that their football has historically reached as well, when they're not being glorious and winning improbable World Cups. But it was very, very difficult, albeit, Costa Rica's got a population of 4.8 million to Uruguay's 3.3. It was still difficult not to cheer the minnows, even though it was a bit confusing about who the minnows were. And also, apologies to Ava, but Spain-Netherlands was just more for the shock factor than anything. By the end, it was becoming a bit one-sided to be a great Cup game, if anything. But for, up until about maybe 60, 65 minutes gone, I thought that was cracking. And the opener, Brazil-Croatia, even though Brazil won and you had the questionable decisions and everything, just purely for Marcelo's own goal at the beginning, which I laughed.
Matt, what was yours?
Well, firstly, I'm going to completely avoid the Netherlands-Spain one, because any game where Van Persie features that heavily is not a favourite game for me. So, I personally, I did enjoy Germany-Portugal. Obviously, the Arsenal boys out there, and seeing Ronaldo's team get tonked was good fun. Costa Rica-Uruguay I also really enjoyed. There was some good football in that match, and obviously, I do like seeing the underdogs, so to speak, get up and knock off some of those big teams. So those are probably my two favourite games of the tournament so far. I'd call them level, yeah. Germany-Portugal and the Costa Rica-Uruguay game.
I'm going to go side with Sam. I've got to say that the Spain-Netherlands game for me was unbelievable, because when Spain went 1-up, I just thought, well, the inevitable was going to happen. The Dutch didn't look very creative at that point, but total football won the day, and I just, it was just shocking. It shouldn't have been shocking, but it was shocking. You don't expect to. Go ahead, Ava.
Can I just say one thing about that whole game? Daley Blind, as much as I do not support the Dutch team because of Van Persie and Robben and Van Gaal, Daley Blind, that pass to Van Persie, that the guy headed in before he banged his head off the floor a few times, that was one hell of a pass. That was absolutely unbelievable.
Was you say that's the best pass of the tournament so far?
Either that or the one that Gale received.
Ah.
Not giving too much credit to the Dutch, sorry.
I've got to say that game was brilliant, and then the Costa Rica game, because I just didn't see it coming. Even without Luis Suarez, on paper you'd have thought that the Uruguayans would have had too much for them, but our boy Joel Campbell came of age. Brilliant goal, brilliant and even better assist. That for me, that was. The tournament so far for me has been one of the best I've seen, and I've been watching it since '82. And my favourite tournament has been Mexico '86. But this is shaping up to be, for mine, probably it might shade it in terms of just the quality of goals, quality of games, incidents.
I think that even England-Italy turned out to be quite a good match.
It was a good match. I don't think English people should be afraid to say that. I thought it was a really good. It was an intense game. Very, I think experience and execution won the day.
Exactly. Obviously, both teams were absolutely knackered by the time there was about 20 minutes to go. That was no surprise. But when even that tie between two traditionally very slowly starting countries in the first match in the middle of a rainforest in the middle of summer, when that turns out to be actually quite good, you know that you've got a good World Cup, I think.
Exactly. Even the 0-0 Mexico and Brazil was a bloody good game.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's only been one really boring game, which was...
my boys, Nigeria.
Yeah. Against Nigeria.
Yeah, that was awful.
Yes. Yeah, we all agree on that one.
Yep.
That was shocking. I went to a Nigerian bar to watch that, and less said about that, the better. Anyway, okay. So let's move on to. I just want to go back to we've done refereeing decisions. There's been some real play acting It's been going on. I suppose it's part and parcel in South America. Would you say, Sam? You know, you got Marcelo yesterday who went down and then he turned to the referee to show him, look, I'm going down, give me a penalty. And then you've got the whole. I thought that Thomas Muller was, you know, he played for that red card. He went down as if he'd been murdered, and then he got up as if it was Christ, being resurrected. There's a lot of play acting going on. It happens a lot on the continent. I suppose it happens even more so in South America. Is it something we should just get used to? Gamesmanship on the field?
Less than you'd think, at least in the part of South America that I'm most used to watching, believe it or not. In the Argentine league, I occasionally take tourists to matches here, and one of the responses I often get is that they're expecting to see loads of diving. And you actually see relatively little, but what you do see is a lot of absolutely atrocious tackles and very hard tackles and fouls in the midfield. Because after Argentina, they felt, were kicked out of the 1958 World Cup, I think it was, there was a bit of a sort of campaign by the Argentine Football Association to try and toughen their players up so that it wouldn't happen again. And they gave referees directives to pretty much not call a foul unless you see a bone broken or something. That has hung over until now. But it's something that it's not going to go away because of the fact that the rules have changed so much over the last couple of decades. They've gone the attacker's way, but referees don't always apply them the way that they might. Fouls aren't always obvious, and so, in my opinion, obviously I've been outside England for 4 years, so you might say that it's got to me a bit. If a player is fouled and goes down when it's not necessarily fouled with enough force to go down, I don't think there's anything wrong with making sure the ref's seen it. Obviously, completely fabricating it like, say, Rivaldo did against Turkey in 2002 is another matter for itself. I'll definitely not defend that. But making sure that the referee has seen the contact, I think that they're entitled to. Müller versus Pepe the other day was a perfect example, because he was clearly, he hadn't been hit in the forehead. You know, Pepe's finger sort of brushes his jaw, and Müller goes down holding his head and everything. And what got Pepe sent off, obviously, was Pepe's reaction to that, because he's an idiot. So it swings around. I can see both sides of the argument. For me, I don't think that I'd rather see players diving to ensure that the ref has seen the foul than the other extreme if you went the other way, which could be that we see a bunch of players with, well, you know, it's an Arsenal fan podcast, so obviously Eduardo-style broken ankles or whatnot. I think that's going to be more of a blight on the game, potentially. So I'm not saying that if you cut diving out, then you're going to have loads of players breaking their ankles. But of the two, I know which I prefer.
Okay, so are you saying then, in effect, in conclusion, that you kind of you don't see much wrong with Marcelo's trying to get the referee's attention to show him that he felt he got fouled yesterday?
If that actually is what happened, then yeah. If it's a dive, if there's no contact, if you happen to lose your balance and fall over and then start appealing to the ref for a penalty because you realise you've fallen over accidentally in the box, that's another matter, and I wouldn't agree with that at all.
Alex Song's just been sent off by the looks of it.
Just saw it. I didn't see what he did. I'm waiting for a replay.
Yeah.
It's straight red, I think.
Rugby at the moment.
Unbelievable.
Like
Indeed. Let's move on to Arsenal players at the World Cup. Who's impressed you? I'm going to start with you, Matt.
Well, I just saw the replay of that.
Oh, it's just, it's stupid. I think it's stupid from Song, really. He's just hit him in the back. He's actually, I know the guy's blocking him, but he just sort of hit him in the back, hasn't he?
He didn't look to get too much of him, though. From this distance, anyway. And I don't mean like from the other side of the world. I mean from my television. Well, clearly, if you're talking about former Arsenal players, Song hasn't impressed me, seeing as he just got sent off. But if we're looking at current Arsenal players, Joel Campbell has obviously really impressed me. Seeing how we played against Uruguay, that was quite a surprise. I've sort of followed him, you know, as much as you can in the Greek leagues. but I haven't seen a lot of him play, so I was pretty impressed with that. I mean, Ozil had a fantastic game for Germany as well, I thought. It was very lively. Who else have we had play in the opening round? I'm trying to rack my brain now. The BFG, I think the whole German team was extremely solid, so he gets some plaudits there as well, and unfortunately, we didn't see too much happening for us from a France perspective, which happens later on. But yeah, Joel Campbell probably takes the cake for me at this point.
Ava?
I completely agree. I think Joel has been outstanding, and I can't wait to have him back at Arsenal.
Go on, continue.
But Mertesacker was a rock in defence for Germany. Ozil was creating all kinds of trouble for Portugal. Even Podolski had quite a few minutes on the pitch. I think he was on for like 10 minutes, but still. And Katora today was quite good too. Do we have any more players there?
Yes, we have a Giroud who didn't really get much game time. We've also got Podolski, as I said. Oxlade-Chamberlain hasn't had a game. Wiltshire came on in the second half against the Italians.
Yes. The only thing I kept thinking was, please don't get injured. That was the only thing that crossed my mind. So, no idea how he played.
Yeah,
that's what I think every time I see an Evan play. Just don't get hurt.
Yeah. Indeed. Sam, just on a general perspective, which Arsenal players have impressed you? I know you're going to have to say this with gritted teeth and whatnot, but as a journalist, independently speaking.
No, I think Joel Campbell, without a shadow of a doubt. Two goals and an assist was just superb, and undoubtedly the man of the match. Apart from that, against a side who reached the semi-finals of the last World Cup, who'd already gone 1-0 up, and he took the game by the scruff of the neck. It was fantastic.
Indeed. Ava and Matt, do you think that he will be given? I know Wenger says he's going to have a look at him in pre-season. Do you think that he could solve one of our problems in the wide positions or up front? Do you think he has enough to sort of, if Wenger doesn't go out and buy a Bentner or
please, oh dear.
One of those kind of guys. Do you think Joe Campbell he certainly has a lot of confidence, doesn't he? But do you think he has enough about him to sort of, get a place in the squad?
Well, it's a way up from Bentner anyway, so it doesn't really matter, does it? I think it sort of depends on how well he does with this Arsenal squad. I mean, doing well in Greece and doing well at the World Cup is great, but can he perform at Arsenal?
Indeed. Matt?
Yeah, from what I've seen, obviously, you still got a long way to go to see if he can perform at this level, but I'd be confident of having him coming in and playing a role as potentially, like a second or third option on the wing. I mean, with a fully fit squad, you've got Walcott on the right and probably Santi on the left, and obviously Giroud up front and whatever happens with the striker scenario. So I'd be comfortable with him coming in as like a second or third option out wide and your third option as a striker. And just having to play for his time, obviously. He's 21 now, so you're really only one season away, in my opinion, from the point where you've got to make a decision on whether he stays or goes. So I think there's no harm in having him in and amongst the squad this season.
All right, so let me ask you, Matt, would you rather have him in the squad or would you rather see Vela come back?
Oh, definitely Campbell. I'm not too keen on old Chips Vela. I think we've been down that road now. And
Ava, do you have a differing opinion from Matt?
I quite like Vela, but I have to go with Campbell for this one. I think first of all, he's younger. He looks like he's got more talent in his body than. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going with Campbell.
Okay, cool. Sam, I want to bring you in somehow to the Arsenal conversation. I'm going to ask you. There's been a lot of smoke about Angel Di Maria possibly moving from Real Madrid to Arsenal. There was rumours that it could have been last season, but he insisted that he wanted to stay at Real Madrid at the Bernabeu. Has there been anything in the Argentine media to suggest that these could be fairly strong, the rumours could be fairly strong, or are they just tenuous, spurious, and Arsenal fans shouldn't really get themselves worked up?
I get asked a lot about, on Twitter more than anything, about Argentine players playing in Europe, being linked with moves to other clubs, and my response is nearly always, and it's certainly the same in this case, that you'd really have to ask someone who covers the game in Spain, because the Argentine press don't have the same links with Spanish clubs. Obviously, there are one or two. There's a common language, and there are one or two Argentine journalists working in Spain, very close to Barcelona, for instance, to cover Lionel Messi and so on. But they're not going to have the same links to Spanish clubs in terms of getting the sources on the transfers. The fact that the player is from whatever nationality doesn't necessarily mean that the press here are going to know anything more than the press in London. Let's say link with Arsenal, link with the buying club, or in Madrid or Barcelona for the selling club.
Okay, so we
not really much answer, is it?
I suppose. I mean, can we expect his father to come out in the press and say he's definitely moving to Arsenal, only to see him go to Napoli or something like that?
Possibly. They do talk. Although Di Maria's dad doesn't do as much talking as, say, Lionel Messi's dad or Higuain's, who's an ex-footballer. So I wouldn't hold my breath.
Great stuff. All right, let's get round to wrapping up. I'm going to ask you guys who are your picks for the tournament, and who you reckon will be the top scorers, the top individual goal scorer for the tournament. So I'll start with you, Sam. Who do you pick to win the actual World Cup?
Before the tournament, I said it was going to be one of Germany, Spain, Brazil, Argentina. And apart from the one rather obvious point, I've not seen anything yet to convince me that it's going to be not one of those three. Obviously, it's not Spain. So I'm going to let my professional hopes rule my head slightly and say that I have faith that Argentina will grow into it enough. As I said, I think they can get to the semis, and once you're in the semis, same chance as everybody else, in my opinion.
And who do you have as your top individual goal scorer?
I'm going to go for Higuain. He's the central striker in probably the most fluid attack in the tournament if they get going. He got 4 goals in 4 matches in South Africa, and he was second top scorer to Lionel Messi for Argentina in South American qualifying. But he's also got an absolutely terrifying goals per game ratio. In Argentina, he's got 21 goals in 37 appearances now after Sunday.
Okay, well, I can only say that Argentina better do the business, and he better do the business against Iran, because when it comes to playing Nigeria, we're going to wipe the floor with Argentina. You've heard it here first, people. Right. Absolutely.
The end game against Lionel Messi is going to be the jewel to watch in that match after 2010.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to have. I mean, the Neymar versus a show is going to be nothing compared to these. This is the jewel to end all jewels. Ava, who's your pick for the tournament, and who's your top goal scorer?
Well, it was Spain. That didn't really go according to plan. So I have to go. This is really difficult because my hat is in Germany, but I am half Dutch. So I'm going to go with Brazil. I'm sorry, I can't.
That makes sense.
And I think top goal scorer, I'm going for a German with this one. I think it's going to be Müller.
He started on fire, hasn't he? He's looked really good.
Yes.
He has indeed. Matt?
Well, I was actually in the same boat as Sam at the start of the tournament. I had Brazil, Germany, Argentina, and Spain as my competitors for it. Spain's obviously fallen to the wayside. I'd actually now adjust that group of 4 to include Italy. I think they are a chance. But for me, it's hard to look past Germany. I think they're just such a solid team, depth all across the park, fantastic footballers. And, I know Pepe got sent off in the first half, but just the way they manhandled Portugal even before that point, for me, they look very good.
Okay, coolio. All right. And your top scorer is going to be?
Top scorer. Before I do say top goal scorer, I will mention, after the comment I made about that sending off for Alex Song, I have seen the replay again and probably was deserved. I don't want to look like I'm a complete idiot, so I'll retract that. But yeah, top goal scorer. Oh, look, at this point, it's pretty hard to go past Muller. I think he's already got 3 on the board, so I think he'll continue along his merry way and finish up on top of that.
Cool, yeah. All right, great stuff.
Wait, was it 3? It was 3, yeah, it was 3.
Yeah, he's got a hat-trick. Yeah, he did indeed.
That's right, he did, yes.
Before we go, I suppose, Sam, I'm going to... The other two won't like this, but I'm going to touch upon the Van Gaal and Van Persie and what you guys could expect at Old Trafford next season. What are your hopes and expectations for next season? Do you think now about European football with Van Gaal at the helm? Do you think you could do a Liverpool and trip at the final hurdle?
And then not win it. Okay. No, after these first 2 matches, my hopes are held at Man United are 3-5-2 all the way, please. Fun to watch. Obviously, we have to pick it up from last season, and it's going to be interesting seeing it. Fortunately, I've being at a bit of a remove from it for the last 4 years, I don't feel quite the same disappointment as I might have done if I was still back in England watching last season. But yeah, I think Champions League qualification has to be the aim for next season. The title obviously would be fantastic, but we've just got to replace too many players in too short a period of time in terms of who's going out of our squad at this stage. So I can't really see it for next season, regardless of how much money we have or haven't got to throw at it.
Would you like to see Vermaelen there?
From what I've seen of him, yes, but I've not seen a lot of him at club level. From what I have seen of him, yes, I would.
Ava, what do you make of these rumours, these Vermaelen to Man United rumours?
I have a strict rule with myself that I do not discuss any rumours regarding Arsenal captains after Euro 2012, thanks to some
yeah.
Trey C-word guy thingy.
See you next Tuesday. Yeah.
so I'm definitely not going to say anything about. No, I would like to see Vermaelen stay, but I can sort of understand if he wants to go because of playtime. However, I hope that Arsenal is not, selling another captain to Manchester United. Speaking of Manchester United, can I just point out that the worst thing I've seen throughout this World Cup was 300k a week Rooney with his corner.
That's all right.
I completely forgot about that,
ever.
so you just mentioned Manchester United. No, I hope he's not going there. If he does, best of luck. I mean, he's got the same manager, agent, whatever you want to call it, as thingy. So it wouldn't surprise me, but at the same time, I hope that Vermaelen's got, a bit more respect for Arsenal to not send fans a message like a certain other person did.
Matt?
Yeah, look, I try not to listen to rumours too much during this period, which is a rule that I often end up breaking. So, and we do have a history on the Gunners Down Under podcast of jinxing just about every transfer we talk about either way. So I'm going to discuss it. I'm very sceptical that. I think Vermaelen will leave because obviously he wants play time and at our club I think he's fairly solidly now behind Koscielny and Mertesacker, and unless something untoward happens to one of those two, I don't think he's going to get back into the starting 11. But given that and given the amount of time on his contract, I think the ball is firmly in our court there and we don't need to sell him to Manchester United. So that being the issue, I think it'd be quite silly of us to sell him to Manchester United. I mean, not only, like I've said, he isn't in our starting 11, but you don't really want to strengthen a direct rival in any way possible, do you? And also, just the symbolism of selling them another captain probably doesn't look that good. So I don't think we'll do it, to be honest.
But we've already kind of indirectly strengthened another rival in allowing, Cesc Fabregas to go to Chelsea.
He left
I can actually
3 years ago.
I can actually see the reasoning behind that decision, to be honest. And that's probably not going to be a popular call, but, you know, for me, aside from the initial angst at knowing that he's going to be wearing blue, I do think he's not a required player in this team, as good as he is, and I do think the money can be spent better elsewhere, and I don't think we're in a position to purely buy players just to sod off another side, like Chelsea seem to do at will, you know, with Willian and Salah.
But the Twitter reaction would be, that's supposing we do strengthen in the areas that we do need to strengthen.
Of course, and if we don't, then I think it comes a time when you sit there and go, well, what was the point if we're not going to strengthen? But I do have faith that we will. I mean, obviously, you know, who knows anymore. But I think given the season that we had last year, how close we were and how much we progressed, I think it would be highly negligent to not go out there and strengthen the areas that we know need strengthening. And until such time as we don't, I'm going to have faith and hope that we do.
Okay. Last of all, there's again in the Evening Standard, London Evening Standard, strong rumours, really strong, a lot of smoke being blown about Mario Balotelli. I've been saying for a long time that AC Milan's financial situation, to me, seems like a classic Arsene Wenger sort of swag. Mm. They're in a load of mess financially. They'll probably accept any decent offer for their guy. He's done it with Santi Cazorla. He's done it with other players in the past. He seems to like those situations. I mean, I could be wrong, but it just seems like a classic Wenger sort of situation. Would you like to see someone of his ilk come to Arsenal, or would you prefer someone who's not as enigmatic, let's say, as a Balotelli? I'll start with you, Eva, and then come to you, Matt.
I personally am a huge fan of Mario Balotelli. I already was when he was still playing at City. I think, you know, he's a bit mental sometimes, I guess. But, you know, he grew up a lot lately. He got engaged recently to a really lovely girl. So I think he would be a nice addition to the squad. The most important part is that he's a striker who knows how to score goals. And to be honest, I don't think there's anything wrong with having a player on the pitch who goes a bit mental sometimes.
Indeed. His fiance's name is Fanny.
Yeah, which is quite a normal name in Belgium.
Obviously.
Well, quite a normal name. You know, it's a name.
Sam, Balotelli showed his class against England on Saturday. Brilliant header. He's a man for the big occasions, as he showed in Euro 2012. Has a great body. The coolest goal celebrations. Would Arsenal be mad not to take someone like him?
No, I don't think they would necessarily, because he stepped it up on the big stage, yes. But as the old adage goes, you shouldn't really buy players on the back of an international tournament performance. And at club level, I find it really weird to think that brilliant goal that he scored in Euro 2012 is already 2 years ago, because he doesn't seem to have sort of kicked on much at domestic level as a player. I'm not entirely sure that he's going to live up to that promise, to be honest.
But I mean, if you look at his season just gone, he scored 14 goals in a piss-poor AC Milan team, despite
the point about the poverty of the rest of the team is a good mitigating factor, yeah.
Yeah, and all the off-field, you know, the racism and the this and the Italian media on his back. I mean, for me, I think he's sort of matured. I mean, it's his first time he's actually been the main man. I mean, at Man City, he was always behind Aguero and this player and that player. Into Milan, he had his problems with Mourinho. Again, going back to Man City, he had his problems with Mancini, who sort of loved him and hated him, you know, in sort of a Jekyll and Hyde kind of way, you know. And he obviously didn't get on with all the Man City boys. But at AC Milan, he seems to have sort of settled down, like I said, despite all the off-field stuff. And you know, he scored 14 goals, which is no mean feat over there.
No, it's true. I mean, I think, obviously, we're to an extent possibly getting into a sort of football manager territory now. But I think if I were trying to sign him, I'd maybe want to see him just for another year settled still at Milan and see how he gets on there and see whether this newfound mature Mario Balotelli actually lasts.
Can I comment on that?
Go ahead, Eva.
He changed managers so often. I mean, Milan has changed managers throughout this season, haven't they?
They have.
and they just fired the manager that he actually did get along with, which is the manager I actually liked and a player I used to like. So to say, I want him to have another season there, sell in, how is he going to sell in with yet another manager that he might possibly, it might be another not as pleasant guy like Mourinho or Mancini. So I think
if you're talking managerial stability to help him settle, then Arsenal are a very, very good example of somewhere that, if that's going to have an effect, then it will have the effect. So, as I say, there are points to be made in both ways for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Matt, do you want to add to that, or?
Yeah. I'm very keen on Balotelli as a player. I'd love to have him at Arsenal. I think he's just that dynamic sort of footballer that would thrive in our system. I think he does a lot of things very well. He's strong on the ball. He makes fantastic runs. His use of the space is very intelligent when you watch him off the ball. He's always thinking and moving and getting into good areas. And obviously he's got a pretty good finish on him when he gets into the box too. And I think with players like Ozil and Cazorla, supplying him, and Ramsey obviously too, and playing alongside Walcott with him out on that wing, I think he'd absolutely thrive in our system. And I think the personal issues as well, like a lot of people seem to be put off. But, Balotelli, to me, when you look at other characters in world football, like just putting it out there, like Suarez or John Terry, I think in comparison, Balotelli's behaviour isn't so much malicious as it is maybe childish.
Yeah.
He's just like a big kid in the body of an adult, and with him, he seems to have calmed down this season, and with him being engaged, and you would think at some point there's probably going to be a family on the horizon, I think that might calm him down, and working alongside Wenger as well. I think with Balotelli, what he needs is someone that will give him trust and faith, rather than sort of try and ride him and drill the zaniness out of him, like I think Mourinho and possibly even Mancini may have tried to do. I think the way Wenger operates might play into Balotelli's hands quite well, and I think he'd do quite well at Arsenal. So here's hoping, but once again, I'm trying not to buy into it.
There is, or just playing devil's advocate, there is this philosophy that Wenger's got rid of. He's eradicated all the sort of troublemakers in the squad, from Van Persie, Song, who had his tete-a-tete with Stevie Bold, going back the players like Adebayor, Gallas, Toure. There's a sense, there is a sense among some people that Balotelli could upset this kind of camaraderie that this present squad has sort of, engendered, and garnered. Do you think that there is, that he could come in and sort of upset that balance, that equilibrium, Matt?
Well, I don't think so, because what strikes me with Balotelli, like I was saying, in terms of his behaviour, is that the players that we've gotten rid of, I think, can actually be quite divisive and nasty characters. So you're talking about guys like Dallas, guys like Nasri, guys like Bentner, Song, Van Persie to an extent. A lot of what you hear about these guys is that a lot of them may not have gotten along with teammates, and that they can be quite... Oh, it's a good goal. Quite divisive in terms of their behaviour. From everything that you hear, Balotelli's actually pretty well liked by his teammates, and I don't think that he would disrupt the team spirit so much. Like I said, I think it's just little things that the quirkiness which may get him under the scrutiny of the media more than an effect on his teammates. But, obviously that, putting additional media pressure on us could have a negative impact. But I don't think it would be a serious blow to morale or team spirit, no.
Ava, do you think Wenger would turn a blind eye to him blowing up his toilet in his bathroom or whatever it is he does in his spare time and stuff? But I mean, he's an interesting character. I mean, I heard that one story I heard from a Man City fan was he heard that a boy was truanting him from school. He came to watch them play at Carrington or train at Carrington. He asked the boy what he was doing there, and the boy said he gets bullied at school. And he went to the actual school and gave a talk about bullying. So he's one of them kind of. He's a real individual. He's a real enigma, isn't he? And definitely it wouldn't be a dull moment. You can imagine with him at Arsenal if he comes to Arsenal. But maybe, do you think that do you worry that someone like him could sort of upset the team spirit at Arsenal?
Absolutely not. I've personally met Balotelli a few times. I've met him at Euro 2012 and I met him in Manchester. And what I've seen and how he reacted to me, first of all, I was a Spain fan at Euro 2012 and I was wearing an Arsenal jersey when I met him in Manchester. He was a really lovely guy, and he was polite, and he's actually quite funny. He's not someone who has, like Matt said, a nasty character at all. He's just, he's what, 21, 22?
23. He's been around forever. But
He's only just turned 23 though, yeah.
Yeah.
But he's still young, and he had to grow up so fast, and he had to grow up being racially abused. He grew up in an Italian family, being adopted, and being racially abused from a very young age. And he had to grow up in Italy, where he was abused. And, at Manchester, okay, maybe the racial abuse wasn't as bad as it was in Italy. And now in Italy again, he's dealing with that. So he had to grow up really, really fast, and I think that influenced him to the point where he just doesn't care anymore, if that makes sense. He just does what he wants to do. He might not think about the consequences in certain situations, such as blowing up toilets and all that. But then again, he's engaged now, and I think they own a bake or whatever. I'm not kidding. So, I think him being part of Arsenal wouldn't disrupt the team that much. I don't think he's a nasty character. I don't think he wouldn't get along with anyone. And plus, the guys used to deal with Frimpong. So I think they can handle Balotelli.
That's actually a pretty good point.
Very true, very true. All right, let's look to wrap it up now. I want to thank all my guests for coming on tonight. I want to thank Sam for coming on. Sam, how will you be enjoying the rest of the tournament? Will you enjoy it even though Argentina are in it, or just sort of, do you get really nervous watching them?
No. If I was going to get nervous about anybody who's watching England, I very much support England. If they play one another, I'd rather England win. Wanting Argentina to do well is obviously a professional desire for me. The better they do, the better it is for me professionally. But I don't get nervous as such. Apart from, I admit that I got a bit nervous during half time of the first match, because I thought, bloody hell, I've been bigging up this team to everybody in the English-speaking world for the last 2 years, and now they're playing like complete idiots. But as long as they don't do that anymore, I'm going to enjoy it. It's been good fun so far.
Good stuff. Matt, yourself, been a very good tournament, despite the defeats for the Aussies so far. What's the general reaction to Australians back home there?
Oh, well, the most Australians that I know, there's quite a few obviously, are really enjoying it. It's been a free-flowing tournament, lots of goals, lots of attacking football, which I think has reflected club football in recent times. So it's probably been, for me, in terms of pure excitement, the best start to a World Cup I've witnessed. So if it continues in this vein, almost every game is thoroughly watchable. So it's absolutely fantastic, really.
And it beats watching Australia play France in a really dour 6-0 rugby match, doesn't it? That was awful.
I don't really watch the rugby.
Good stuff. Ava, Spain are out. Does that mean you're going home, or do you think are you looking to stick around in Brazil and sort of soak up the atmosphere?
I'm not going anywhere. No, my brother's half Brazilian, half Portuguese, and we're here meeting his family, his father's family. So I'll be enjoying myself. I've got my baby sister, my baby brother here supporting the Netherlands. I've got friends who are supporting England. My best friend is supporting Italy here. So I'll just pick a team and tag along with one of them.
Great stuff. Great stuff. All right. I want to thank everyone for coming on. This has been an Arsenal Fan TV podcast, the first of the World Cup weeklies. My name's Giles. I want to wish you all a good day, good evening, and good night. Thank you for joining us.